So my name is Matthew Minch. I'm Senior Program Officer at the Joyce Foundation, a private foundation based in Chicago, and I lead our work focused on helping adults who are underprepared for the workforce get the skills and credentials they need to get good jobs and advance in careers. To Joe's comment there, our work for years has been focused on the human capital piece, on this sort of skill building, whether it's the basic foundational skills of literacy and math, or it's getting trained to be a welder, a nurse, what have you. Because obviously this stuff is important, but through the course of that work, we realized we're missing a big piece here. And we recognize that for a few reasons. One, anytime you open a survey of employers and what employers are looking for, it's all of these other things. It's your critical thinking skills, it's your teamwork, you're showing up to work on time, taking initiative, all of this. And then it's also a recognition, it might have been Marcia Bollinger who made the comment earlier that in this sort of, she referred I think to the gig economy, but in any event, in a more sort of dynamic economy where people have multiple jobs and multiple careers and the nature of those jobs change and the technology changes in those jobs, people need to be able to navigate that effectively and capably if they're going to stay productively engaged in the workforce. And we were just not sure that the education and workforce development systems were equipping folks with that adaptive readiness and all of those sort of interpersonal skills necessary for success. And so we've taken it on as a big charge to focus on what we're calling personal success skills. Power skills is another fine one, but I think we all agree that we don't like soft because it diminishes the importance of them. They're not really non-cognitive skills. There's important cognitive elements to these things. So we say success skills, you say what you want, but I think we all know what we're talking about here. But we can explore that if there's some disagreement. I want to call out that we did fund some research on this question of success skills for adults. Recently, the SRI Education published just a few months ago what I think is one of the first significant bodies of work trying to understand, geez, everyone talks about this stuff. What the heck are these skills? What does the research say about whether they can be learned? And what are some of the programs out there that seem promising in helping adults develop these skills? So happy to connect you with that research if you're interested, and I'll mention it throughout the course of the conversation. What we're going to do with the next 56 minutes or so is to understand a little bit about what these skills are, but also where this group of folks really wants to be focused, where their organizations are focusing on, because it's a whole lot of things. We probably can't, any organization can't do it all. Where are you focused? What do you think are the best ways to help people acquire these skills? And maybe in particular there, what are the role of community colleges and some of the other partners that need to be involved? And then thinking sort of more broadly as this group, as philanthropy, what can we do to help more individuals get these skills to reach more people effectively? That's our charge. We're going to do it. We're going to do it excitingly and actively and engaged with the with the whole room here. And to start, I'd love for our panelists just to kind of introduce themselves to us a little bit, who you are and how you situate this work within your broader interests around helping people get economic opportunity. Also, to understand who you are, and since we are talking about jobs, I'd love for you to tell us what was your first job? Your first, not what mom and dad had you do, chores, but what was your first job? You want to start with you, Art?
Sure. My first job, I turned 16 years old. I'm sorry, Art Gibble with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina. So I turned 16, and this was in the 60s. So at that time, my mom cut our hair, 3 boys and a girl. So guess what we got? We got butch haircuts, and all done in about 5 minutes time, too, by the way. So when I turned 16, I knew I could get a job, and I asked my mom, look, I'm 16, and this was in the age of the Beatles. I said, Mom, this isn't working. Can I finally go to a barber? She goes, you want to go to a barber? You pay for it. So the motivation, I got on my bike, literally, rode 5 miles to a shopping center, and put in an application and became a busboy to earn enough money so that I can grow my hair and go to a barber. And that was probably my motivation to go to college, too, by the way. So.
Do you want to tell us kind of about this work, this success skills, broader supports, power skills, whatnot? How do you think about it within your broader area of
No,
work?
I want to know what her job.
Okay, we can go through jobs first, and then we'll come back to that.
All right.
I don't have such an exciting story. My first job, I grew up in Florida. Oh, that's right, I don't have that. Is this? No. I don't. Do we need it?
Is there an on button?
It says on. Hello? No? I think you can hear me. So I grew up in Florida and went to Florida State University for my first 2 years of college before I transferred to Washington.
I'm sorry, you know what? It's working now, and it helps with the case. Sorry, Rose.
Is that better?
It's on.
Okay, I can't tell the difference, but trust whoever is recording. So
It's flipped on.
it is flipped on.
Sorry, Rose.
That's okay. Is that, oh, now I'm too loud. Okay, so Florida State University, I was in Tallahassee, and I was, and my first job was working naturally in Florida with AARP as in the sort of Tallahassee, legislative affairs office, which was a wonderful fit for me. I had a great affinity with elder issues growing up, and I had aspirations to be in policy, and I had a wonderful mentor. Most importantly, it was an amazing, all-encompassing, very integrative experience opportunity because I had a wonderful mentor, Conchi Bretos, who used to lead the Office of Elder Affairs under former Governor Childs. So she brought me into that position.
My name is Bob Templin, and I turned 17 and became eligible for a learner's permit to drive a car, and my folks indicated that that was possible if I was able to pay my insurance. And so I got on my bicycle, and I didn't make it at the shopping center, but the local hospital needed a dishwasher. And so I was in the back room in the where the cooking took place, and washed the pots and pans and the dishes, and that was my first paid experience.
I want to sort of take that principle of transformation and ask, each of you just to kind of ground us in your work and how you think about, delivering that transformative experience to the people you work with in your organizations that you fund, and how that fits within, again, how you think about providing economic opportunity. You want to start?
Sure. First of all, I need to say that Goodwill of Northwest North Carolina is just that. There's 160 Goodwills across the U.S. and Canada, and each one is independent. Independent board of directors, independently funded, et cetera. So what happens in any one individual Goodwill happens only in that Goodwill. There is some commonality and so forth, but those are all individual decisions. So what you hear me say today is not necessarily applicable at the Goodwill in your community. But at Goodwill, our primary responsibility, at least at my Goodwill, is helping people overcome barriers to employment. We believe that a job is the most important thing to economic stability. Economic stability provides resources for people to make the choices that they want to make. And the best way for us to do that is to try to engage with people who want to be able to better themselves. So we offer a hand up, not a handout. We think a handout is charity, and where there are certainly opportunities for charity to be needed and dispensed, that's not our role. So by offering a hand up, you heard Monty this morning give the example of the welder and what an inspiration that really was, and how proud he was of himself and as an individual. But if you take that one step further, why we do the work that we do is exactly that, but it goes beyond just that one welder. Think of that welder's family, his kids, his grandkids, and neighbors, the inspiration that that one person, just like Bob's decision, that one person to make a decision to take that hand up and run with it, the inspirational effect on an extended group of people. That's why we do what we do. And we do that in collaboration with community colleges. 10 years ago, we had a long-running relationship with Forsyth Tech in Winston-Salem, and that had been in existence for over 20 years. And in the last 10 years, we've expanded that out to now 11 different community colleges, where we work with the continuing education, adult continuing education element of those colleges. They're trying to reach the same people that we reach, to reach out and extend their mission into the community. And guess what? Many of those people are already coming to Goodwill and other related type agencies. So it's a great marriage for us, the community college and for Goodwill, to extend both of our missions in a mutually beneficial way. So we offer a lot of different classes, certifications at our variety of buildings and facilities across our territory. The instruction is all done by community college instructors. And whether you're taking a welding class or a CNA class or a computer class, whatever it happens to be, plus lots of stackable credentials built in succession, you're getting a certificate from that community college and all of the wraparound services that Goodwill provides in addition to that. So help with the resume, interviewing skills, job leads, connections to employers. So we think it's a wonderful marriage.
Excellent, thank you.
Before you move on,
Uh-huh.
is that taking place at your various facilities?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Not at Forsyth.
No, in our facilities. And one of the reasons we work with the adult continuing education group is it's sort of the underfunded stepchild of the community college. Lack of resources, lack of space, lack of money, you get the picture. And so we're a natural partner for them to seek out because we've got space. We can invest in materials, classrooms, supplies, as well as provide the students.
Can I add, that's actually the key reason, or one of the key reasons that I invited Art to speak today, because for me, the really essential part about coming to these classes on the Goodwill campus is you capture the people who would never go on the Goodwill campus, who would never consider themselves a college student.
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah, and so then it becomes transformative. They complete one class and you say, you just finished a college class. You know? I think that is reaching a completely different population than everything we've been talking about today.
Right.
Rosa Maria?
Sure. By the way, my punishment for not being on the panel organizing call was that I developed a presentation that we're now just going to cast aside, but you do have in front of you, and I may refer to some slides along the way just to have the visual as I speak. It's a little helpful, but we had a technical glitch, and then I was punished, and he said, no, now we're just improvising. So I'm thinking about how to sort of connect, sort of my biography to my destiny to my work at Casey. If you really want to know more about my biography and my path, it's almost more important to ask me what was my parents' job and what's their path and how their path made my path. My parents and myself immigrated from Cuba, and my father worked at the incinerators at the Miami International Airport when there were incinerators, so basically just a janitor and truck driver. And my mom was a domestic caretaker and child care provider. We were just barely above working poor only because my father worked every overtime hour available to him. And yet, a family of 4, and yet they made possible for me being able to go to college. I'm glad that Dr. Padron from Miami-Dade is not here because I didn't go to Miami-Dade. I just had I said I have to leave town. I have aspirations to leave town and be in policy and create more opportunity for other folks like education has created for me. It's just extremely lucky with a stable home environment and being able to, access loans to go to college. moved to DC eventually, went from Florida State to American University to George Washington University in DC to London School of Economics, and eventually worked a number of some of the think tanks in DC and landed in philanthropy many years ago. So the philanthropy that I work with is called the Annie E. Casey Foundation. I'm a senior program officer with the Family Economic Success Unit. For those of you who aren't familiar with Annie E. Casey, it's the largest national foundation focused on children, dedicated to building a brighter future for millions of kids, especially those risk at poor educational, economic, social, and health outcomes. We were founded by Jim Casey, the founder of UPS, and at his request, our work focuses on strengthening families, building stronger communities, and building ladders to access to opportunity. So we do that through research, through pilot programs, through policy influence as well. And like UPS, we're a very data-focused organization, so you may be familiar with the Kids Count report, which assesses children's progress in all 50 states. And we've always been a kids-focused organization, direct investments in kids, but we've also always recognized that kids thrive when families thrive. And families thrive when there's economic opportunity. So we've always worked both generations, but we've always been kids-focused. And I was asked to come on the panel to talk about how a foundation that is child-focused came to invest in community colleges as a way to fulfilling our mission and access to opportunity for kids. Now, you might say that we've always cared about community college retention, graduation, and advancement because we've for a very long time invested in early care and education, quality early care and education, which is the highest impact investment in terms of children reaching their highest potential, moving on, and graduating from college and moving to a better job. But that's not what I came here to talk about today. We also have some more recent investments that are looking to bring what we're learning about what it takes for family economic success, for poor, low-income, and working poor families to succeed. What kinds of services, what kind of integrated approaches work in community-based organizations that could work at community colleges. And so we're bringing what we're learning about family economic success and pairing it with some of the best innovations in community colleges. So a lot of the day has focused on the completion challenge at community colleges. And there are a number of reasons for that. You've heard about that over the course of the day. The challenges with ill-prepared students, the challenges around remediation. Community colleges especially, 60% have to be remediated versus 40% in four-year colleges. So if you're less prepared, it takes you longer to complete. Another is that community colleges are serving a new market. A new market of non-traditional students. The paradigm used to be you graduate from college, you graduate from high school, you go to college, you enter the workforce, and then you have a family. But the profile of community college students today is by and large less linear and less traditional. The large majority of their students are already in the workforce. 62% of full-time students, almost the entire of part-time students. They're older, half are over 22, and a quarter are parents. Many are single parents. So we were looking at the community college challenges, and we thought that's the working poor population that we've been learning about how to serve at Casey for a very long time. The challenges of juggling family, work, and education are all very significant. The rising college costs, state budget cuts. So the opportunity that we saw, so potential niche for Casey, was how to bring a framework around integrated supports to remove barriers so students can better, stay in college and achieve graduation in college. So we thought for us that it was, essential, very fertile ground for testing some of what we're learning at Casey about promoting economic success for low-income families. And I'll talk about it later, but specifically we had developed sort of a three-pronged framework that we had promoted at community-based organizations and had great success in scaling across many community-based organizations and networks, including some Goodwills across the country. That basically the framework is remove obstacles, invest in a skill pathway, and accelerate the timeline, which is, again, the coming together of a lot of what we're learning. But what we're learning around what it takes for families to succeed and stabilize their finances isn't part of the language of colleges and what they think they do. And wasn't even yet part of the student success movement in colleges. So that's why, Casey moved into more deliberately investing in community colleges and investing in improving retention and graduation rates focused on low-income students at community colleges. And I'll talk about, what the intervention is a little later.
Thank you, and I appreciate how you've improvised a lavalier mic as well. So Bob, tell us, how do you think about this within sort of all of the work that you're interested in, and how did you come to that?
Well, I left you as I went from the dishwasher to the community college. So I was a community college graduate and knew how it transformed my life. Fast forward, I became a community college president in an area and wanted to extend that transformative impact to whole communities. And did that for a while. I left that and went to philanthropy. And so, in fact, I was part of one of the nation's first venture philanthropy funds, Venture Philanthropy Partners in Washington, D.C. And there I became interested from your perspective with regard to smart investments with an impact, and became aware of this growing plight of the mismatch between a growing population with a desire to participate and lacking the skills. And the more I looked in my own community, in the Washington, D.C. community, I saw this phenomenon happening. 2/3 of our population growth was due to immigration, of people coming to America in quest of the American dream. And they had a strong back and a good work ethic. And that worked 100 years ago at Ellis Island, but it doesn't work in Washington, D.C. in the 21st century. And I'm thinking, the community college should be helping these people. It's the right institution, but it wasn't. And I was trying to figure out, why is it not? And I called the community college president at Northern Virginia Community College, one of the nation's largest. And she said, Bob, I'd like to do more, but my budget was just cut $9 million. State funding has been cut every year for the past 4 years. We're having trouble being able to maintain what it is that we have. I don't have the capacity. And year after year, we had this conversation until one day she called me and she said, you've been on my case for the last 5 years to do something, and I'm leaving the college. Why don't you be president of the community college? You do something about it. And I thought, all right. And so for the last 13 years, that's what I've been doing. And I came to the realization, not as an educator, but as a philanthropist, that this issue that we're looking at today is too big for any one organization to handle alone. No one organization has the skill sets or even the mission, and certainly not the aptitude to handle these complex issues of families that are in distress and adult workers who have so much going on in their life. And it's so much more than just the technical skills that are required. And so I began putting together coalitions of community colleges and high-performing community-based nonprofits who could combine, and it is not easy because they're different cultures, but using the framework of collective impact, beginning to think about how we could define common outcomes beyond our normal metrics. So instead of talking about completion, if I talked about, with a nonprofit, working with low-income families to get the family out of poverty and into self-sufficiency, and that the ticket to do that was a credential of market value, not necessarily a college degree, but a credential of market value. Could we agree to do that together? And one of the first organizations to join the partnership was Goodwill Industries. And one of the lessons I want to leave for you, because if I were in your shoes, I would think, how can I think about my community and my role? What could I do in my community? Well, I got to tell you, in your community, you got a community college. And in your community, you've got a Goodwill. And in fact, those are the two largest organizations, networks in the United States working with the poor in workforce development and family sustainability. And Goodwill has got incredible resources that don't depend upon government funds. Largest retailer, one of the largest retailers in the United States, right? Over $1 billion in sales a year to help support their mission. They're not necessarily competing for the same funds that a community college would. They can collaborate. They've got a methodology of case management that is really incredible, wraparound services, reaching populations that would never see themselves as community colleges. And community colleges do have a lot of assets, and they have a lot of technical knowledge and know-how to do workforce training. Put those two together. But they're not the only two. There are other organizations that are out there. And by the way, Art, I don't know if you remember, but 11 years ago, I invited Forsyth and your organization to come to NOVA, Northern Virginia Community College, and we had 3 Goodwills and 3 community colleges, and we developed models for the rest of the nation, and today over 100 Goodwills and community colleges have partnerships. And if you don't have them in your community, you ought to ask the question, why aren't you guys partnering? So I began looking for other organizations, and I'll be glad to go into what those were, but they exist in your community. High-performing nonprofits working in low-income communities to have the trust of the community that might do something around job training, and there is an opportunity for collaboration if you will be a convener and create an incentive for them to want to cooperate. Another large one that I'll just mention, if you're in an urban area, that community colleges and a nonprofit with spectacular outcomes is Year Up, 1 year, Year Up, and community colleges working together with urban young adults with just spectacular results. And so the models are out there with proven results. Can you imagine the discussion we had earlier today? If iBest, which might not work in all community colleges, we're working in a Goodwill, collaborating with a community college, with a pathway from there into a college level program. Now you got a formula for real success. So that's what my work focuses on now.
Okay, so let's sort of, I want to come back to Year Up in a bit when we talk about scale, but let's take this idea of you got a community college, you have a Goodwill or some other high-performing CBO in your location. What should they be doing on this question? So again, we could probably brainstorm 100 of these skills that we all think are important. A growth mindset, collaboration, problem solving. Your brains are already thinking of another dozen. Which do you think these partnerships, or individually the CBOs or the community colleges, are best placed to focus on? Are best able to help their customers or their constituents develop? Or what should they be focusing on amidst all of this stuff?
Well, Art, you guys talk about this a lot, so.
Yeah, no, you're talking about what should we be,
Should
what
it
product
be
should we be
showing up to
offering
work on
to
time?
these folks?
Well, which are the skills? Do you want to build communication skills? Do you want critical thinking?
Yeah.
Is it a growth
Yeah.
mindset? Is it agency?
And actually, I'd like to make a comment before I'll answer that, but let me make a comment first. We talk about the employers, and that is a key. What we do, community college, Goodwill, and the employer have got to be linked, and we use what's called business advisory councils, and we have a lot of them. We've got a total membership of about 250 people, and they help guide us on what's needed and so on and so forth. But in the macro sense, we've heard today that the employers are really starting to come to the table. They're recognizing that they can't hire the people that they need and so on and so forth. And a lot of this, quite honestly, has been brought on, well, at least some portion of it has been brought on themselves. Employers, especially since the Great Recession in '08, have really done a couple of different things. One, as they flushed out people out of their organization, they combined positions. And so there's a great book called Why Can't Good People Find Good Jobs? And that's all I'll tell you about it. But there's an example in that book of a company looking for an engineer. And they put out the job spec, and they wanted an engineer, highly qualified, that could also type 70 words a minute. Keyboard 70 words a minute. Sorry, I'm showing my age. And they didn't get anybody. It's like, well, what is going on? And it's like, well, why would you need an engineer to be able to keyboard 70 words a minute? It's because at some point in time, the office assistant got eliminated, and the engineers had to do their own keyboarding. And so as HR drafted the job spec for that, it says, well, you're an engineer and you have to type this. That's what went out. Well, good luck trying to find anybody that fits those criteria. And nowadays with the computers, that never would get pulled out of the computer as even an applicant. So you could have a highly qualified engineer who only did 55 words keyboarding, but they're totally missing the opportunity on that. The other thing that's happened, especially since the Great Recession, is, and this was probably predictable, as more people flooded the market, supply and demand, and you needed somebody, well, before your entry point may have been a high school diploma with some experience. Well, now all of a sudden there's people out here with college educations that are available. So, well, why would we settle for somebody with just high school? So the bar started getting raised in all different positions across the country. And so as the bar got raised, we have this huge number of people who have been flushed out of their jobs, not to mention the 20% of high school, which should be graduates, who are not graduating every year, coming into a workforce with the bar being totally raised, in many cases artificially. But it's worked to the advantage of the employers. And so that's part of the difficulty in them not being able to fill a lot of these jobs. So what was the question?
So of all of these various like other skills that we think are really important, which are community colleges and places like the Goodwill best able to focus on?
Well, again, I'll join the parade and say I love the terminology power as opposed to soft skills. And that is terribly necessary. And I'm not sure where it all started or accelerated, but the lack of those skills in today's society is pervasive. It is really pervasive. People just communicate differently or don't communicate at all. Their expectations on a job, and this isn't just slamming millennials, which is the big target nowadays. There's a lot of older millennials, if you will, who just really don't understand it. Teaching, I'll give you a really good example. We just started a program built off an organization in Cincinnati, Ohio called Cincinnati Works. Great organization, you may have heard it, so on and so forth. Well, we went up, visited them, and we borrowed the model, and we've started it in Winston-Salem, and we call it Goodwill Works. But the whole concept is to start with the employer. And we engaged with a few employers. We just started this program literally 2 months ago. You engage with the employer first, and their agreement basically is to communicate well with us, as well as the potential applicants that we're sending them. We understand what their hiring practices, what they're looking for specifically, et cetera. And then we basically do the screening for folks. And instead of the typical way that a Goodwill would engage with people, if you came in, we're not going to turn you away, okay? You're willing to be there. You want the hand up, et cetera. You're willing to be there. This program goes one step further. You not only have to be willing, you have to be capable. And so we assess your skills. Are you really skilled for that job? If we put you through what I refer to as an intensive charm school to basically work on those skills, to get you ready, to teach you the hidden rules of being a good employee and why employers do certain things. There's even a commitment card that the graduate signs, and one of the commitments they make is to call before you quit. And how many people, especially in low-wage jobs, they get fed up, they just walk out the door and so forth, and they're shooting themselves in the foot. So the whole mantra there is stability before mobility. So So to get a stable job, be there long enough to really understand things, the connection remains. The counselors that they work with at Goodwill and keep them engaged maintain. It's sort of supported employment light, if you will. We maintain the relationship, check in regularly with the employee. We also check in with the employer. How's Bob doing on the job? Well, he was late a couple of times. Okay, fine. And we start working with them. Even though the supported employment is typically thought of with the disabled, this is essentially case management or supported employment to a degree until they can kind of be off on their own.
So what I'm hearing in that is you want to see the behaviors that will lead to success, lead to stability and then longer term success. And it's not necessarily that you're trying to work on more of sort of like at a psychological level or a sort of neurocognitive level of like changing an individual. That's what I heard. We can get into that, but I'm curious, Rosa Maria and Bob, how do you think about this? And again, where should this kind of partnership be focused? Is it on just showing up in the behaviors? Is it on problem solving? What is it on?
My experience has been working with high-performing nonprofits that what Art is talking about does take place. They all have their charm schools. They have something else. First of all, they have a ratio of folks working with them that a community college typically wouldn't be able to do. It's intensive. It's hands-on. It's a cohort. They become a family. They take care of each other. In fact, the norm is you're responsible not just for yourself, but for the others that are here. We're all facing hardship and difficulty. We need to support each other and help wherever we can. And you are able to accomplish something you thought you would never accomplish. And they do. And they transform. It is not a small process. It is a big process. Go to some of our graduations. Now, I'm not talking community college now. I'm talking about to Goodwill and a community college, Europe and a community college, a GED program and a community college. And you hear their story. And it is remarkable. It is transformative. The tears are flowing. I made the mistake one time of being the commencement speaker at one of these, and we had two testimonies given by graduates. And I threw away my speech because it was pointless compared to their story. And that is what's so remarkable about this relationship. And so it is transformative. I wish I could tell you what the parts of it were. I call it the secret sauce. I know it doesn't happen at a community college in our normal classrooms. But because it does happen, it creates whole new opportunities. I'll just tell you two quick stories. I was with, many of these are single moms who have been through abusive relationships. And I said, one time at the graduation, I said, I want you to look under your plate. This was with a high-performing nonprofit. I said, under that plate is a letter of admission and a transcript for 15 credit hours, college credit hours for what you've learned. And they looked at each other and lifted up the plate and looked, and I thought they were going to go, hey, how about that? And they started crying because the unthinkable had happened to them, that they had been in college-level learning and now were Nova students. The second one was when I went and I was speaking to the class before they graduated, and I said, you know, it's not just you that you've affected. It's not that you are capable of going to college. Now there's no question in your family about whether or not your children will go to college. And again, the tears were coming, and they realized that they had broken through a barrier that was going to change for generations. And so it is transformative. Mm-hmm. I wish I could take it into its pieces, and we're trying to work on parts of that. But it happened in the nonprofit, not in the community college.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa Maria, do you want to weigh in on this one? Or?
Sure. Well, I think it's very relevant to what, the way that sort of Casey stepped into the community college space. So, I talked about the new market and non-traditional students in community colleges. These are majority low-income families, in some community colleges, all low-income families, large number, with children. they're doing the right thing by being at the community college, whether it's a credential program for them or they want to go an associate program. So this is a population of folks that are doing, making a sacrifice to go to community colleges to either, get into the job market or improve their skills and get a better job. But what we know but being in the community college, as I said, puts a huge squeeze on family finances. What we're learning from our work with community-based organizations about what it takes for families to get ahead is that you need integrated supports combined with a skill pathway. You need to stabilize family finances. That may mean access to supports at this critical period where they're spending that money to go to college, to pay for tuition. There may be other supports. To answer the question about what's the skills component of it, what is a key piece, I'll talk about the Center for Working Families framework. One of the 3 rungs of the framework is, and actually I'll point you to slide 4, if you can look at the, because it's easier to see it, is that to bring a set of coordinated and aligned supports to students that are at risk while they're in community colleges. The one on the right is this is the skills component, is helping them better manage their budgets at this really critical time. So Casey has long invested in financial coaching and financial literacy. When does it matter more than when students have, or their budgets are squeezed from doing what's right? So the idea is to bring financial services information, financial coaching at the community college or at a community-based organization, but that's accessible to community college students to help them in this difficult period stretch their money further for school-related costs, pay their bills on time, try to build a safety net, and just some basic financial skills about staying out of trouble while you're in school. So this is, the most stressful time often for families is when you're doing what's right, investing in your future, but financially other things are falling apart. And it's the reason that we posit that part of the reason that you have the completion challenge, part of it is, you don't have students maybe ready enough academically for what's ahead, but part of it is, especially at community colleges, a low-income population with fragile finances. So I've spoken to many leaders at community colleges that say, having access to, food stamps and food support, the rates of food insecurity by low-income community college students are impressive. So can you connect to a food bank? Can you bring a food bank on site? Are there any discretionary dollars when someone's tire breaks? And that, that tire could mean $200. That's the cost of the class, but they now have to spend it on the transportation to get there. That's the difference between staying in the semester and dropping out. It's really these very simple financial insecurity reasons. The cost of childcare. Could you get that person connected with some benefits around, childcare access or Head Start access? That childcare costs are enormous. They are often the reason. I would love to be in a class, but I don't have anybody to take care of my child. I don't have any way to pay for childcare. That could be the difference between dropping out and staying in. So it's sort of these access to basic supports that these people are already eligible for, connecting them to that, combined with the better budgeting. In this very intensive time, better budgeting skills, knowing how to stay out of trouble, not get the credit cards that they're throwing at you to pay for colleges, not choose the wrong ones for you. So it's a combination of a program that is helping you build your skills, helping you get a credential, combined with budgeting skills, combined with access to services when you need it, on time, real time when you need it. So that's the framework that we're saying is sort of integrated services for community college students. Now, what I'm not saying is that the community college has to do it all itself. That's how this connects to what these folks are saying. That's where you could have the community-based organizations partnerships come in with those that are better tied to the community. So it doesn't have to happen at the college, but our investment in community colleges says, you know, you want to move towards these integrated supports that we posit will help students stay in class. Low-income students who are trying to do the right thing but are cash-strapped will help them stay on board. But to do that, you need to, A, partner with community-based organizations to do some of the rungs that you don't have the capability or the staff to do on site. But the job of the community college can be to align services for the student. Align it so that what they're receiving at the financial aid office isn't completely disconnected from the, you know, academic supports. It's about the alignment of supports that can help students succeed, that can make the difference between, you know, flat tire, lost transportation, no access to discretionary funds. Lost my child care in the middle of the, you know, semester, I've got to drop out. Could this aligned, coordinated supports could make the difference between staying on board or dropping out?
So some real examples of what Rosa's talking about. I just want to refer you online to a link called Courses to Employment. It's on
Yes.
the Aspen Institute website, where we've documented various models of how community-based nonprofits and community colleges
Yes.
can do this with significant outcomes. And so I mentioned, because we're kind of talking in the abstract. Here we've got Los Angeles, Chicago, Austin, Seattle, Northern Virginia, Flint, Michigan, places that have created the models that you can take a look at.
Right.
Excellent. So I think that was a helpful sort of broadening of an understanding of everything that the community college and the nonprofit needs to provide to ensure success for individuals and to ensure that that transformative moment is successful or it catches. So with a handful of minutes left, I want to focus to, all right, what should this group be thinking about in terms of investing? And to do that, I want to focus again on these power skills. We'll stick with the phrase. And understand what are the greatest challenges that community colleges and nonprofits have with understanding what they are, how to effectively infuse them into the programs, and how to do so at scale. Bob, you had suggested, you know, a moment ago that, you know, it's kind of we kind of know it at this level, but how to get down to the pieces, we're not as sure. You know, is there some support there? And then you also mentioned Europe earlier. Everyone's always say, well, Europe's a great program. We need it everywhere. You know, how do we make that happen?
Well, one of our big problems is community colleges don't do this very well. We teach college courses and we teach technical skills, but on the power skills, the soft skills, the social skills, we're just not great at it. These community-based nonprofits often are, and so I'm working with Europe now to try to unpack what it does with a hypothesis that maybe it can teach community colleges how to do it. Europe, by 2020, will be working with about 25,000 young adults with community colleges across the country. But when you look at how big the need is, that's not even a drop in the bucket. Can we unpack this and teach community colleges and other nonprofits how to do it? And so we're in the process of the development stage of trying to do that. So that's one way to try to get at it.
Art, what do you think? What should we be figuring out?
Bob mentioned earlier that from a case management standpoint, the caseload needs to be small in order to have impact. So the most obvious one in terms of teaching this to folks and staying with them on a longer period of time are the personnel that are actually doing it to be able to scale that up.
Well, that's right, and that's often shortchanged, I think, to some of the research that Brandon shared earlier.
Right.
What do you think, Rosa Maria? What?
Well, I think two things, and this was actually mentioned earlier, that the establishing of partnerships and the sustaining of partnerships requires dedicated focus, a dedicated staff time. It's not something that you just pile on to what somebody's already doing. That to make it successful, you need to support the work to do so? Is it a dedicated, staff person? Is it a department that is maintaining and helping these partnerships succeed? Because it takes sort of, it might take data integration. It takes a lot of intentionality around it. The other piece is to have what I was talking about, sort of aligned and better coordinated supports. You need sort of some glue money and time to build an infrastructure for that at community colleges. The way community colleges typically operate, except for, a lot of, we've seen some amazing examples of innovation here today. That's not how most community colleges operate. This is sort of the best of it. This is sort of what to invest in. But we need to invest in the infrastructure of community colleges to operate in this more aligned way. And that, what Casey is funding is sort of some, as we call it, some glue money for some of these better performing, more high performing, more capable community colleges to leverage what they're doing better. The financial aid office is folks and the staff are better connected to what academic supports are available at my college. And those folks know what community-based supports are available in my community that I can tap into. You all, I mean, we operate in such massive silos. I've spoken to community college leaders and says, first of all, the language of student success is like learning the new ABC to us. We didn't really think about student performance before just the last couple of years. We weren't addressing the graduation, challenge. So the whole language, the revival around student success is new. So is the concept of partnerships. So is the concept of alignment and coordination at the financial aid office. If a student shows up at the financial aid office, with a need, maybe if they can be connected to a community-based organization. If the financial aid office can't help, can a community-based organization? If the help needed is academic guidance, can they be connected to that? If there's, a debt service or a bank or financial service entity in the community, can they be connected to that? But that takes intentionality. That takes, a reworking that takes time for the different entities. And what actually one of the deans at Northern Virginia Community College said to me was, the way we operate is the, my little fiefdom, your little fiefdom. My little tower, your little tower. The financial aid office does not talk to the student support center, does not talk to the academic support center, does not talk to the, great programs that are, connected to employers. They're all happening in, they're disconnected and happening in completely different buildings. And if you're really going to move with success to a more integrated, more holistic student success agenda, then you have to invest in the infrastructure and processes to move in that direction. And that's going to take years because that's culture change. So the initiative that we are supporting, that Casey is invested in, we partnered with Lumina, with Kellogg, and actually two other foundations. And we are together, because we thought Casey knows how to do family supports really well. Lumina knows how to do college access really well, will help us understand what it takes to re-engineer how community colleges operate. What does it take to change the culture at community colleges so that, as someone said earlier today, the college is more ready for the student? Because the new market of students is changing, so is the college ready for a student? Or is the college just going to say, well, these low-income students, ill-prepared, don't have the finances, can't pay the tuition, and therefore, oops, I can't perform and I can't increase my performance. But this student success agenda paired with an understanding of, how families succeed, stabilizing family finances, budgets, et cetera, can be much more successful. So as an investment strategy, it's yes, invest in the sustainability of these partnerships, but also invest institutionally in the community colleges for them to leverage what they already have going, but do it better at it, and bring integrated supports to students. What we had learned through community-based organization investments was integrated supports at the right time, a pairing of sort of high touch services and low touch. Low touch may be, a lot of colleges are doing these student success classes. The new orientation is not walking you through campus to show you the buildings. The new orientation is everything about what's available at your college for you to succeed. If you have this problem, it's sort of, call me before you leave. Call me before you drop out. Who do you call before you drop out? What services are available to you? How do you stay out of trouble in terms of, massive piling on of student fees because you're just, not getting insufficient funds at your bank, and now you owe $65. That's what you were going to put the tuition. So these are very bread and butter things that we think make the difference between a student staying on board and dropping out,
Sure.
given the new market of students. It is important to have short-term programs, credentials, the pathways, industry connections, a job connection. So that's a motivation for students to stay on board. But some real bread and butter issues can also stay in the way, especially when you're talking about the population of students that community colleges are now serving. It's even harder for them to get through. So can you align and pair, can you invest in that, is one of the things that we're trying to do with our initiative. It's called the Working Student Success Network at community colleges. Let me just lastly say that we're in 4 states. California, Arkansas, Washington, and Virginia. And we're working with funding Northern Virginia Community College to do this kind of alignment and culture change as part of their student success agenda.
Thoughts, questions from the group here?
Or did I wear you
I know
all
we
out?
didn't answer everything, because
No,
I have a
it's-
bunch of
it's
questions.
my fault, because I think I wore everyone out.
We've got at least
All
one.
right, Liza.
Thank you. I'm really curious about this model that you just put forward, Rosa Marie, on in thinking, since I'm working in not any of those states that you named, those 4 states that
Yeah.
you named, and certainly we found some of those strong kind of individual partners. But in some of our other communities where we're working, we don't see that integration.
Yes.
How, and we've talked a lot today, I think, about the convening power of philanthropy, about the kind of thought leadership role that we can play in our positions. How do you recommend starting those conversations? Or if, as you talk about that glue money, when we don't have the huge initiative or can't make the big investments, but maybe can make a smaller, 1 or 2 year grant to kind of get the ball rolling, where would you start?
Well, we are in this in the WSSN Community College Initiative. We are sort of halfway through in the pilot, developing, supporting colleges in developing the right model of integration that's right for them. I would say that one of the things that we've learned is that college leadership really is really leaning into it. So there's a huge appetite for this sort of glue money to align this program with that program and with that program with the academic services, with the financial aid, et cetera. There's a huge appetite is what we've learned. They say that this is a galvanizing force for them in moving to a student success agenda. I'm going to get to your question. The other thing we've learned is a peer learning network around how to do it is extremely important. So we have invested in a peer learning network with the colleges that we're in. There may be an opportunity to extend this peer learning network beyond the colleges that we're in and to other states. So an opportunity may be to build on what folks are learning through this pilot with a larger learning network around integrated support. So there may be sort of a philanthropy partnership around that. How can these colleges that are maybe 2 years into doing it help spread the knowledge to other colleges around doing it? I think that colleges learning from each other is more important than philanthropy coming in and saying, can you do this? So a state learning network around integrated approaches that and allowing colleges investing in colleges to stay together for a year or two to sort of figure out what's the right alignment in their college. Our intermediary that we're working with is Achieving the Dream, is doing the technical assistance and the peer learning support for these colleges to move in this direction. So I would say maybe a peer learning approach is one way to do it. Showing colleges some models of how other colleges are doing it, so investing in maybe some briefs about here's 5 different models of how community colleges are moving in this direction, that it's not just the partnership, but it's the institutional alignment piece. Those are 2 examples. I'm not sure if that's helpful, but I think colleges learning from each other is the most important thing rather than sort of philanthropy stepping up from the outside. And I also think that our intermediary Achieving the Dream is learning a lot about what it takes to support colleges in moving in this direction. And there may be some ways to extend what we're doing to other colleges. But what I will say is that colleges have to be ready and committed from top leadership down to moving in this direction.